You can almost hear it, the soft hiss of a wick catching flame. A single candle burns low beside you, and for a moment the light trembles, then steadies, painting gold along the tabletop. Outside, the world is dark and quiet. It's that hour when everything slows down enough for old stories to return, the kind that feel older than memory, older than writing, older even than time. Hey there, friend. I'm glad you're here. Tonight, we're going far back. So far back that history itself was still learning to speak. Before the first empires rose, before kings and crowns, before anyone could even imagine the word civilization. We're traveling to the land between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, where a people once looked up at the vast, star-filled sky and asked the first real question, who is in charge of all this? The answer they imagined would echo for 5,000 years. They called them the Anunnaki, the princely seed, the offspring of heaven and earth. But before we get to gods and myths, let's make sure you're settled. If you haven't already, dim the lights or light a small candle of your own. Maybe put your phone down beside you and let the glow of the screen fade to black. You might even want to turn on a quiet fan or just listen to the soft crackle of this sound in the background. And if you enjoy the story, feel free to subscribe. It helps a lot. This story isn't meant to rush you, it's meant to drift, like a slow river carrying you toward rest. And before we begin our journey, I always like to ask, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Are you in a small city apartment, with the hum of traffic beneath the window? Or maybe somewhere quieter, a farmhouse where the night air smells of rain and soil? Wherever you are, I want you to imagine this. It's thousands of years ago. The air is warm and still. The land is flat and shining with water. In the far distance, the horizon glows where the moonlight catches the edge of the marsh. You can hear frogs, distant dogs, and the low splash of a paddle in the canal. A reed boat slides past, silent except for the ripple it leaves behind. This is Sumer, the first civilization we can truly picture. But if you were standing there then, it wouldn't look like what most people imagine. There are no marble columns, no shining towers, only mud and water and endless sky. The ground smells of clay and barley. The cities rise out of the plain like islands made of brick that was shaped by hand, dried in the sun, and stacked with hope that it might last another flood season. In one of these cities, Uruk, perhaps, you might see the flicker of a torch from a high terrace. A man climbs narrow steps carrying a jar of oil for the temple lamp. Below him the streets are narrow and packed with the smell of bread baking and beer fermenting. Dogs sleep under carts. Goats bleat from courtyards. Somewhere, a scribe leans over a small tablet, pressing wedge-shaped marks into wet clay. Each mark is a tally, a word, a prayer. Writing was born here, not as poetry, but as accounting. At first, people wrote down how much grain was stored, or how many goats had been delivered to the temple. But something happened when they began to see that clay could hold not just numbers, but stories. They started to write names, deeds, songs, soon myths. It was as if the world had discovered its own memory, and with that memory came power. For the first time, people could send their thoughts beyond a single day. A ruler could speak to his people across generations. A priest could record a ritual so that it would never be forgotten. And on those same tablets, someone wrote down the names of gods, the names that would endure long after their cities fell to dust. The Sumerians believed their world was alive with meaning. Every canal, every field, every gust of wind carried intention. The rivers rose not by chance, but by decree. Harvests succeeded or failed, according to cosmic law. And those laws were decided, not by mortals, but by a council of divine powers, the Anunnaki. They were not angels, not demons, not distant stars. They were administrators of the universe, the Great Council, who met in the heavens to decide how the year would go. When kings took their thrones, when floods came early, when the moon vanished from the sky for a night too long, it was the Anunnaki who had spoken. Every city had its patron, its representative on that divine board. Uruk had Inanna, fierce and brilliant. Eridu had Enki, the clever lord of the waters. Nippur, the spiritual capital, had Enlil, the god of wind and decree. And somewhere above them all sat An, the sky itself, quiet and distant, whose very name meant heaven. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the rhythm of their world. The slap of sandals on wet clay, the thump of grain poured into a basket, the crackle of oil lamps in temple halls. The people of Sumer worked by day, and at night they told stories about the beings who kept everything in motion. Stories that made sense of the flood, the famine, the harvest, the stars. These weren't tales of faith alone, they were the blueprints of civilization. To understand how to farm, how to govern, how to love and make peace, they imagined divine models above them. In their myths, gods argued over irrigation rights, appointed overseers for rivers and hills, and held assemblies like city councils. Their heaven looked very much like their earth, organized, hierarchical, but strangely human. And as centuries passed, those stories traveled, copied from one tablet to another, one city to the next. Each retelling added new details, new heroes, new lessons. The Anunnaki changed shape, but they never disappeared. They began as caretakers of Sumer, and became judges of Babylon, architects of destiny, keepers of the flood, and finally, rulers of the underworld. It is one of the longest and most astonishing journeys any idea has ever taken, from mud to myth, from work songs to scripture. That's the path we'll follow tonight. We'll walk through those first cities, touch the wet clay of creation, sit beside the priests who read omens in the stars, and listen to the stories that survived 5,000 years. But for now, stay still, let the candle burn a little lower. We're at the edge of the known world, where history meets legend, and the first voices of the gods begin to whisper through the reeds. When the wind shifts and the night deepens, you'll hear them too, the murmuring of the Anunnaki, deciding how the world should be. And in the next part of our journey, we'll step closer to them, into the cradle of the first cities, and see how a civilization of clay and water built the foundation for everything that came after. You wake to the sound of water, not waves, but the gentle lap of a canal against a mud brick wall. Dawn hasn't broken yet. The air is thick, cool, and smells faintly of salt and smoke. Somewhere nearby, a reed mat door creaks open, and a voice hums a tune that's half prayer, half habit. The city of Uruk is stirring. Out here, between the two rivers, time is marked not by hours, but by water levels. Each year, the floods come down from the mountains to the north, spreading across the plains. When they recede, they leave behind a skin of dark silt so fine it gleams. It's a blessing and a curse. Too little flood and the fields die. Too much, and the canals burst, drowning the barley and washing away months of work. That delicate balance between too much and not enough is what shaped everything here. Civilization didn't begin with kings or conquests. It began with people trying to control water. Along the banks of the Euphrates, the first ditches became canals. The canals became networks. The networks became systems that had to be measured, planned, maintained. And to do that, someone had to count. Someone had to keep track of who worked when, who was owed what. That's how the first scribes appeared, quiet figures with sharp reeds, sitting in the shade, turning labor into symbols pressed into clay. If you walk down the streets of early Sumer, you'll see them everywhere. Long, narrow lanes flanked by high mud walls, roof terraces where pigeons coo, doorways hung with shells and reeds to keep out heat and insects. Goats wander freely, nibbling at discarded stalks. Children play with clay marbles. From open courtyards, the smell of baking bread drifts out, flat loaves laid against the sides of dome-shaped ovens, their edges blackened just right. The houses are plain, but the temples, those are different. You can spot one from far off, a raised terrace of whitewashed brick, rising like a man-made hill from the flat horizon. At the top stands a small shrine, its walls decorated with inlaid shells and colored stone. Inside, the air is cool, still, perfumed with cedar and oil. Clay figurines of worshippers line the walls, their hands clasped, eyes wide and unblinking, as if caught mid-prayer for eternity. This is where the city's heart beats. The temple isn't just a place of worship, it's a granary, a treasury, a school, and a court. Its records track the flow of life itself. Barley in, beer out, wool in, cloth out, offerings to the gods, rations for the workers. The temple owns fields, herds, warehouses, and workshops. It is both heaven's embassy and the city's first bureaucracy. It might sound dry, but imagine it, hundreds of people moving in rhythm, every day, guided by clay tablets, filled with marks only a few could read. A scribe scratches numbers into wet clay, hands it to a messenger, who seals it with a thumbprint, and rushes down to the docks. There, barges loaded with timber and copper wait to depart, bound for lands most citizens can only dream of. To the east lies Dilmun, across the waters, modern Bahrain perhaps. Beyond that, the mountains of Magan and the mines of Oman, where men carve copper from the rock in unbearable heat. Trade brings not just goods, but stories, strange birds, blue stones, spices that smell like smoke and honey. The people of Sumer learn that their world has edges, and beyond those edges lies mystery. Every new good becomes a myth in miniature. Lapis lazuli from the mountains of the gods, cedar from the forest of immortals. The unknown becomes sacred simply by being far away. In a way, this is how religion evolves too. When you live by rivers that flood and vanish without warning, it's easy to see the divine in the unpredictable. The Sumerians don't pray for miracles, they pray for order, for rivers that behave, for floods that nourish instead of destroy. To them, every act of balance is a sign of cosmic attention. The gods aren't distant, they're administrators, just like the priests. Yet beneath the rituals and the offerings, something new is forming. An idea that the universe itself is structured, that power flows downward like irrigation water, from heaven to gods, to kings, to people. The temple's ledgers mirror the sky's decrees. The same logic that organizes canals organizes destiny. As the sun climbs higher, the city wakes fully. The streets fill with sound, the bleating of animals, the barked orders of foremen, the clang of bronze on stone. On the rooftops, women spread freshly woven cloth to dry. In courtyards, brewers stir thick pots of barley mash, watching for just the right foam. Beer is safer than water here, and it flows through every part of life. Workers are paid in it, priests bless it, travelers carry it in clay jars, sealed with bitumen and marked with the sign of the temple. The heat builds until the air itself feels heavy. Somewhere, a gong sounds, a call for laborers to begin dredging a canal. It's slow, muddy work, baskets of silt hoisted, dumped and leveled. But it's sacred too. The canals are the veins of the city, and keeping them open means keeping life itself flowing. When the foreman shouts that the work is sanctioned by Enki, no one argues. The gods have spoken through clay and command. You can feel how fragile it all is, how one missed flood or one breach in the levee could undo decades. The people know it too. That's why they build their cities, layer upon layer, never starting fresh, always rebuilding atop the ruins of the last. Beneath your feet, you'd find the bones of older Uruk, older shrines, older hopes. Each generation leaves its bricks, its stories, its small faith that the city will last forever. And above it all, the ziggurat rises, a staircase between earth and sky. At night, the priests climb its steps, carrying torches, calling the names of gods into the wind. Their words rise and fall like waves, echoing over the dark plain. To those who listen from below, it must sound like the gods are answering back. That perhaps is the truest beginning of religion as we know it. Not the fear of death, but the desire to be heard. The wish that somewhere beyond the clouds, someone is keeping track, balancing the accounts of the world the way a scribe balances grain and beer. Soon the Sumerians will begin to name those powers, to organize them into families, councils, and laws of heaven. They will imagine the first divine assembly, the Anunnaki, meeting to decide the fate of kings and rivers alike. But that part of the story still lies ahead, just beyond the dawn. For now, the city sleeps again beneath its noon heat, and the temple lamps burn low in their niches. The scribes roll up their reed mats. The river glints like liquid glass. Somewhere far away, thunder mutters over the horizon. The wind shifts, and for the first time, the people of Uruk look up at the sky, not in fear, but in recognition. They have built their world. Now they will build their gods, and as the storm gathers at the edge of the plain, the first myth begins to take shape. The sky will soon meet the earth, and when they part, when the heavens are pulled away from the soil, the Anunnaki will be born. You return to the city at dusk. The air has cooled, and the streets smell of dust and baking clay. From the rooftops, the setting sun catches on copper tools, on jars of water, on freshly plastered walls that gleam like gold for a brief moment before the light fades. It's a quiet hour when the day's labor is done, but the city hasn't yet fallen asleep. Down by the river, the scribes gather. They sit near a long, low table of polished clay, the surface still warm from the day's heat. Each of them holds a small tablet and a reed stylus cut to a fine point. A clay lamp flickers beside them, throwing tiny shadows that look like moving script across their faces. The tablets are the color of river mud. The marks they press into them look simple, almost accidental, but they are the most important invention in human history. It began with counting. A shepherd brings in his flock, a brewer delivers his jars, a potter his bowls. Every trade needs memory. At first they used pebbles and tokens, one for each sheep, each loaf, each jar of oil. Then someone realized you could press the shape of those tokens directly into clay. It was faster, and the clay didn't forget. Over generations, the marks became symbols. Symbols became words. Now everything has a sign. There is a sign for water, for barley, for worker, for debt, for God. Even the air, the invisible thing that moves through your lungs, has its own wedge mark. When you press a reed into clay, you're doing more than keeping track. You're freezing time. You're saying this moment matters. The scribes treat their work like devotion. Each mark must be made in the right order, at the right angle. Too shallow, and the sign means something else entirely. Too deep, and the clay might crack in the kiln. The tablets dry in the open air, then go into an oven where fire seals them forever. Long after their makers are dust, their words remain. That's why we still hear their voices now. In the temple courtyard, those voices multiply. Rows of apprentices recite lists, the names of trades, metals, birds, gods, and rivers. The repetition is endless but soothing, like a chant. They don't yet think of themselves as historians. They're accountants, archivists, keepers of the city's breath. But sometimes, between the lines of barley shipments and beer rations, a scribe will add something small and human. The day was hot, or the barley was poor this year. A crack in the stone of record keeping, just enough space for a story to slip through. That's how literature begins. The earliest myths are written not for pleasure, but for explanation. Why does the river flood? Why must we work? And why must we die? Each question becomes a verse. Each answer is written as dialogue between gods and men, because for the Sumerians, the world itself is a conversation. The gods speak through wind and water, humans reply with offerings and song. The temple is where that dialogue happens. It's not a church the way we imagine one. It's a living organism. By day it hums with labor, women grinding grain, men hauling baskets of reeds, animals led in for sacrifice. At night it quiets into ritual. Priests anoint statues of the gods with oil, dress them in fine fabric, and lay small bowls of food at their feet. The statues are not symbols, they are guests. The Sumerians believe that the divine can inhabit them, that the gods can literally sit, eat, and rest in their shrines. To keep them pleased, everything must run on time. If a god's meal is delayed, it's written down. If a lamp burns out early, it's noted. The divine realm is treated like a household with schedules and accounts. And yet, there's reverence in that precision, a belief that order itself is holy. The temple is also where knowledge pools like water. Every priest is a kind of scholar. They study the stars because the gods might write their plans there. They study the liver of a sacrificed sheep because the folds might spell out the next season's fate. They copy hymns that praise the rising moon, the flood, the grain, the beer, the wind. In doing so, they build the first libraries, rooms filled with tablets, stacked in rows, each one labeled, each one indexed in its own way. Inside those libraries, the myths begin to grow bolder. They no longer just explain, they dramatize. The gods begin to act, to love, to argue. The sky becomes a father, the earth becomes a mother. And between them, a family of divine children, each one representing the forces that shape life: air, water, love, storm, fertility. The Anunnaki are being born, line by line, tablet by tablet. You can feel the change in the tone of the writing, where the earliest tablets are clipped and factual. 5 measures of barley to the temple of Inanna, the new ones sing. They say things like, when the rivers were young and the sky was near the earth, the gods sat together and planned the fates of men. It's not administration anymore, it's imagination, and imagination, once awakened, never sleeps. Outside the temple walls, the city follows the same rhythm. The stars are the city's clocks, and the people can read them now. Farmers plant by the moon. Sailors travel by the glitter of constellations. Even time itself becomes a tool of civilization, divided into months, seasons, and years. Each temple keeps its own calendar, marking the days when certain gods must be fed, when songs must be sung, when crops must be sown. There's comfort in this structure, but also danger. Because when you start to believe that every success or failure depends on a divine decision, you begin to wonder who makes those decisions and why. That's the question that will transform these cities from mere settlements into civilizations of faith. Soon, the Sumerians will write of a great council in the heavens, a court where the gods gather to divide the duties of creation. One rules the air, another the sea, another the soil, another the stars. They will name this council the Anunnaki, the princely seed of the sky, born from the union of heaven and earth. But that idea hasn't reached them yet. For now, a priest in Nippur leans over a tablet, writing carefully by the light of an oil flame. His reed stylus moves steadily, pressing wedges into the clay. Each mark is a sound, a name, a truth too sacred to speak aloud. Outside, the night deepens, and thunder rolls faintly over the river. He pauses, looks up, and listens. To him, it's only a storm, but to the generations after him, that sound will be the echo of something greater, a moment when the earth itself began to imagine its gods. The candle in his hand flickers. He dips it toward the tablet, reading over the fresh marks, lips moving silently. The words are the same ones you've been hearing all along, whispered through 5,000 years of clay and silence. When heaven was still joined to earth, when nothing yet had a name, the sentence trails off. The rest will come later. When sky and soil separate, when names are given, when destinies are assigned, when the Anunnaki take their thrones in the invisible court above. The story of creation is stirring, just beneath the surface of the clay. And when we return, we'll step into that first cosmic dawn, where the world itself is still being divided, where gods are born, and heaven learns how to let go of the earth. Before kings, before cities, before the first canal cut its way through mud, the world was one. No sky, no earth, just a single, boundless mass, heavy and silent, floating in the dark. The Sumerians called this unshaped beginning Enki, heaven and earth fused together, a world without edges or breath. There was no light yet, no wind, no voice, only potential. And then something stirred. The ancient tablets never describe it as thunder or explosion. They speak of a separation, a slow pulling apart, like clay being drawn into two pieces by invisible hands. The upper half lifted and thinned until it became the sky, and vast, bright, unreachable. The lower half settled and thickened into Ki, the earth, fertile and waiting. Between them was left a thin space, the realm of air and breath, where life would one day move. That separation is the first act of order, the first moment when chaos gives way to structure. The Sumerians didn't picture it as violence or birth. It was more like administration, the world dividing its duties. And took the heavens, the high and distant realm where stars would one day glitter. Ki took the ground, the rivers, the quiet weight of things that grow. Out of their parting, time began to flow. When the two were joined, nothing could move. When they parted, everything began. From that space between them came Enlil, god of air and authority, born at the hinge of heaven and earth. His arrival changed everything. He was the first wind, the first voice, the first to speak commands that others had to obey. The old poems say, Enlil separated heaven from earth and carried away the earth for his realm. It's not rebellion, it's delegation, the cosmos learning to breathe. And remained above, remote and still, his name becoming synonymous with the very sky itself. Ki remained below, patient and heavy, holding the seeds of life in her clay, and Enlil became the breath that moved between them, the force of will that gave shape to both. Imagine that moment. The first dawn rising over a new world, the sky stretched smooth and unblemished, the earth dark and wet, steaming where it meets the air. The rivers have no names yet, the mountains are still soft, their edges blurred by mist. From the horizon to horizon, the light glows amber, as if the world itself were made of living fire. In the distance you can see shapes moving, slow, deliberate, the first gods waking from the clay. They are not human, not yet. They are forces given faces, the water flowing upward into Enki, the light hardening into Utu. the warmth of the soil coalescing into Nineveh, the mother of mountains. The Sumerians never drew a single scene of chaos before creation. There was no war in the beginning, no slain dragons or cosmic battles. There was just organization, the gods assigning themselves to their stations, setting up what they called the me, the ordinances of the universe, the invisible laws that govern how everything should work. Enlil takes command of the middle realm, the air between heaven and earth. He becomes the power of authority, the breath of life, and the symbol of kingship. Enki, born from the sweet waters beneath the earth, becomes the mind of creation, the craftsman, the problem solver, the keeper of knowledge. Nineveh, the mother goddess, rises from the living soil, her hands shaping mountains and wombs alike. Her name means Lady of the Sacred Mountain, and she will later be called by many others, Nintu, Ninma, Mami, the birth giver of humankind. Together, these beings are the first family, the divine generation that will populate both heaven and earth. The Sumerians call them the princely seed, the children of the sky, but not yet. For now they are only voices in the wind, moving through a silent world. The rivers have begun to flow, but there are no cities to drink from them. The sun rises, but no one watches it climb. The gods work alone, experimenting, arranging, preparing the stage for something new. In one tablet, a fragment barely the size of a hand, there's a line that reads, "When the gods were yet small, they bore the labor of the world." It's a strange image, divine beings hauling clay, cutting trenches, shaping mountains. But that's how the Sumerians imagined creation, not by command alone, but by labor. The gods themselves working, sweating, building the foundation of a world that must hold steady forever. Enki digs the first channels for water, guiding the rivers through the low plain. Ninhursag plants the first seeds of vegetation. Enlil breathes into the sky, making the winds blow and the clouds form. And from En, the quiet one, come the patterns that will become stars. Each act is a task completed, a rule written into the bones of existence. Gravity, fertility, rain, fire, all catalogued and assigned. It is a divine project plan, drawn up before anyone even knows what a day is. When all the elements are in place, the world is almost ready, but something is missing. The gods have order, but no rest. They can move the rivers and stir the winds, but the work is endless. Each time the canals silt up, they must clear them. Each time the fields dry, they must water them. It's a strange echoing foreshadowing of human life to come. And perhaps that is the point, because soon in their divine council, they will decide to create helpers, beings who can shoulder the labor of the gods. Beings made of both heaven and earth, both divine and mortal. But that will come later. For now, the newly separated world hums with potential. At night, the first stars appear. They are not constellations yet, just bright points across a vast, empty sky. But the gods watch them carefully, marking how they move. Enlil notices the path of one star across the horizon and calls it the measure of time. Enki observes another reflected in the water and calls it the mirror of wisdom. The heavens are a ledger, and the gods are the first accountants. Meanwhile, the earth continues to thicken and bloom. She sends up grass, then reeds, then trees. She gathers water into pools and fish into rivers. She shapes animals, slowly, carefully, with a mother's hand. But she does not yet make humans. The world, for all its beauty, is empty of thought, and maybe that's why the gods begin to feel restless. For the first time, there's silence. The work is done, the earth is fertile, the sky is bright, and yet there's no sound but wind. The divine family looks upon their creation and realizes that something is missing. Not worship, not obedience, but companionship. If you stand at the edge of this mythic dawn, you can feel that restlessness too. The wind stirs, the rivers shine, but something unsaid hums beneath it all. A question waiting to be asked. Why create a world if no one can wonder at it? The gods have built the machinery of existence. They have parted sky from earth, named the stars, and ordered the waters, but now they need something, or someone to see it, to tend it, to remember it. That is where destiny begins to shift. And somewhere beyond the horizon, as Enki stares down into the glimmering waters of the deep, he begins to form a plan. The world is finished, but its story is only beginning. The world has shape now. The rivers wind through the plains. The mountains catch the dawn light like sleeping giants. The wind moves freely between heaven and earth. Yet for all this order, the heavens still feel heavy, like an empire without a ruler. The gods have been born, but they have not yet learned how to govern. Enlil moves through the air, restless. He is power made visible, the invisible force that bends grass, topples reeds, fills sails. His breath is the first weather. When he stirs, the sky brightens. When he sleeps, the horizon dulls. Beneath him, the land ripples with wheat and reed. But there is no one yet to harvest, no one to offer thanks. In the deep places of the world, another god is at work. Enki, lord of the fresh water, the Abzu lives below the surface, where the sweet water meets the salt. The Sumerians will one day call him the clever one, the architect of destiny. He knows that every act of power needs a design to hold it. Without structure, even divinity dissolves. He spends his days shaping the me, the sacred ordinances of the universe. Each me is a principle, a blueprint, a law of being. There is a me for kingship, another for wisdom, another for song, for weaving, for justice, even for chaos. The me are invisible threads, each one necessary to keep the cosmos intact. To Enki, the world is a workshop, and creation never ends.
Far above, in the high air between sky and soil, Enlil grows impatient.
He rules by command, not persuasion. He sees that order must be enforced, or else it fades like mist. So he summons the first divine assembly, a council of powers, who will share the work of heaven and earth. At the appointed time, they gather in Nippur, not yet a city, but a sacred height, a mound of clay rising from the plain. The air here hums with stillness, torches burn blue, the air smells of resin and damp earth. The gods arrive one by one, Enki from the Abzu, Nikasag from the mountain, Nanna the moon from the dark sky, Utu the sun from the horizon, and Inanna bright as morning, whose eyes flash with both love and war. When they sit, the wind stills. This is the first council of the gods, the birth of government, the architecture of divine order.
At its head sits Enlil, not by right of strength, but by necessity.
He speaks with the clarity of a storm. Let each take a realm, he says, and keep it in harmony. Let there be a measure for everything that moves under heaven. To Enki he gives the waters, the deep wisdom, the secrets of life and craft. To Nikasag, he grants the earth's body, its clay, its womb, its power to renew. To Nanna and Utu the lights of time, the moon to count the months, the sun to judge the days. To Inanna, the passions of the heart, love, courage, beauty, and the fever that moves men to build and destroy. Each god takes their domain, and balance begins to hum across the cosmos. Rivers follow their courses, the moon rises on time, fields bloom, the laws that define every art and virtue, are divided among them, like stars in the night. It's not peace exactly, but rhythm. For the first time, the universe has a pattern, and yet the council is not perfect. Power divides cleanly only on clay tablets. In practice, even gods have rivalries.
Enlil believes in decree.
His word is law, and he expects obedience. Enki believes in cleverness. He bends rules, finds loopholes, creates solutions that no one else can see. Between them stands Ninhursag, the mother and the mediator. She knows that too much decree crushes life, and too much cunning weakens order. Her wisdom is quieter than theirs, but deeper. When the two brothers clash, she restores the balance. At this early hour of the cosmos, the Sumerians imagined their gods as a family, sometimes quarreling, always bound by shared purpose. They didn't picture divinity as perfection, but as power learning how to govern itself. In their mythic court, the gods sit in ranks like scribes before a king. Behind the great ones are the younger deities, stewards of wind, field, mountain, sea. These are the first generation of the Anunnaki, not yet the fearsome judges of later stories, but attendants, envoys, overseers of creation's daily business. They carry messages between heaven and earth, between Enlil's command and Enki's design. If you were standing in that moment, you might not recognize them as gods at all. They look like people, radiant, yes, but human in form. The Sumerians carved them that way, on cylinder seals, robed, bearded, calm, wearing the horned crown that marks divine rank. The gods resemble their creators, because in a sense both are imagining each other. As the council meets, decisions are written into being. The sky shall stay high, the earth shall stay low, rivers shall run in their beds, crops shall rise in season. For every rule that governs nature, there is a god behind it, a personality, a presence. Even the wind that rattles the reeds has a name. Enki leans over the table of creation, his hands busy. He crafts the Abzu, his freshwater domain, and fills it with fish, reeds, and life. He teaches the other gods how to shape with care, not to destroy when building, not to waste when blessing. Ninhursag molds the beasts of the plain, pairing them in her hands like small figurines, and breathing life into their nostrils. Enlil sets the mountains in place, and drives his storms across their peaks, so that rain will feed the rivers below. When their labors are done, they rest. But only briefly, because even perfection requires maintenance. Each season must follow another. Each rule must be renewed. The gods meet again and again, reviewing the balance of things like priests tallying accounts. The Sumerians imagined this process as continuous, not a single act of creation, but a living administration that keeps existence from collapsing. That's the secret heart of Sumerian myth. It isn't about miracles, it's about management. Creation isn't a flash of power, it's a bureaucracy of divinity. Still, one problem remains. Though the gods have ordered the heavens and the earth, they feel the strain of their own work. The rivers clog, the canals silt, the harvests must be tended. Every function demands attention. The younger gods, the Igigi, the laborers of the divine estate, begin to tire. At first, they grumble softly in the corners of heaven, then louder, then in open protest. They've been dredging rivers, lifting soil, building temples, not in worship, but in obligation. They whisper that Enlil demands too much. Head Enki, for all his wisdom, does not share their burden. The complaints reach the High Council. Enlil dismisses them with anger. Enki listens, troubled. Ninhursag watches, silent. For days the heavens rumble with tension. The younger gods are weary, the elders divided. The world they built is stable, but the cost of keeping it that way is too high. Somewhere in the deep, Enki begins to think again. He has a habit of solving problems others call impossible. And this one, this exhaustion, this imbalance between divine will and divine labor, will soon lead him toward an idea so daring that it will change everything the gods have made. He looks down into the clay of Ki, the fertile earth his sister rules, and wonders what might happen if spirit could be joined with soil, if intelligence could take root in flesh. He does not speak the thought aloud, not yet. But somewhere beneath the still surface of the world, the clay begins to stir. The storm in heaven has quieted. The younger gods have returned to their work, though their hearts are still heavy. The rivers run again, the winds flow, the plains shimmer under the sun. But something in the divine order has changed. The council's decisions alone are not enough to hold the world together. Rules must be written, power must be defined. And so begins one of the most mysterious projects in all of ancient mythology, the crafting of the Me, the invisible codes that govern both gods and men. Enki is the one who conceives them. In his temple at Eridu, beside the deep waters of the Abzu, he sits in silence for many days, listening to the soft bubbling of the spring beneath his floor. The air smells of cedar oil and damp clay. The walls flicker with lamplight that bends across carved reeds. He is not building a weapon or a tool. He is building reality itself. Each Me is a principle, but also a thing, a tablet, a token, a vessel containing an essential power. The earliest hymns list them in long hypnotic sequences: kingship, truth, music, wisdom, craftsmanship, heroism, judgment, victory, weaving, love, speech, fear, deceit. Even contradiction is sacred. Chaos is not erased, but assigned its own Me. The gods will use these as both gifts and restraints. To hold power, you must possess the Me that defines it. Without the Me of kingship, no ruler can command. Without the Me of song, no musician can charm. Without the Me of justice, even the gods cannot judge. In Enki's hands, these forces hum like living instruments. He lays them out in a long hall, hundreds of them, glowing faintly like embers. Each one carries a pulse of divine order. Each one is a promise that the universe can stay balanced, as long as its rules are remembered. The council of the gods gathers to witness the unveiling. Enlil stands beside the throne, solemn and proud. Ninhursag watches quietly, her eyes full of weary patience. The younger gods whisper among themselves. Enki lifts one Me after another and declares its name, this one for wisdom, this for craftsmanship, this for love, this for strife. They listen as though they are hearing the music of creation for the first time. When the ceremony ends, Enki divides the Me among the great cities. To Eridu, his own city, he gives knowledge, architecture, and the art of fresh water. To Uruk, the city of Inanna, he grants beauty, passion, and kingship. To Nippur, sacred to Inanna, he entrusts law, order, and the voice of authority. To Uruk, under the moon god Nanna, he gives time and ritual. Each city receives its portion of the cosmic inheritance, and with it, responsibility. The Sumerians would later say that civilization itself was the sum of these Mea. Without them, life would dissolve back into wilderness. With them, people could build, trade, write, and dream. But the gift is fragile. The Me are not moral, they are mechanical. They grant power, not wisdom. The same Mea that allows a king to rule also allows him to conquer. The same Mea that brings music can also stir war. Enki knows this, and so he guards the tablets closely, locking them in his temple's deep chamber beneath the Abzu. He intends the Mea to be shared only with care. But the gods are not immune to desire. Among those who covet them most is Inanna, the brilliant and unpredictable goddess of Uruk. She is both love and war, delight and ruin. Her temples shine with lapis and gold. Her priests sing songs that make the air tremble. Yet she looks toward Enki's storehouse with envy. Uruk is a great city, but it hungers for more, for every Mea that will make it thrive beyond all others. So one night, as the stars glide silently across the black sky, Inanna travels to Eridu, The reeds sway at her passing, the canals shimmer with her reflection. When she enters Enki's hall, she greets him warmly. The old god smiles. He loves her boldness. She is, after all, his creation too. They feast, they drink sweet beer, and they talk until their laughter echoes through the Abzu's pillars. As the jars empty, Inanna leans closer. Her bracelets catch the lamplight. Her voice is soft and cunning. She begins to flatter Enki, to praise his wisdom, to ask questions that sound like curiosity, but are really negotiations. By the end of the night, she has what she came for. One by one, Enki hands her the mere, not all, but enough to make Uruk the envy of heaven and earth. He gives her the me of kingship, the me of truth, the me of music, the me of victory, the me of craftsmanship, the me of desire. Each glows as she gathers them into her boat of heaven. When dawn comes, Enki sobers and realizes what has happened. He sends his messengers, sea monsters, guardians of the Abzu, to stop her voyage. But the boat sails fast. The creatures rise, fail, and vanish. Inanna reaches Uruk, triumphant. The citizens line the canals as she arrives. The Mia unloaded, paraded through the streets, and installed in the temples. That moment becomes the mythic justification for Uruk's greatness. Civilization, the Sumerians said, came to humanity not through conquest, but through cleverness. Stolen from the house of wisdom by a goddess who dared. Enki, watching from his temple, can't help but smile. He knows the truth. Power taken is still part of the plan. The Mi have reached the world where they belong. Now cities rise faster. Artisans master their crafts. Scribes perfect their tablets. Law and architecture and poetry bloom together. The Mi have awakened the human spark, though humankind itself does not yet exist. That irony lingers in the air, like smoke. Here divine laws of civilization are ready, but there are no hands yet to use them, no voices to sing their praises. And so, once again, the gods feel the strain of unfinished work. The younger deities still toil, shaping land, raising mountains, tending rivers. Nicole's decrees must be renewed daily. Nicole's gloom of earth groans with the weight of growth. Even Enki, deep in his watery hall, feels fatigue settle on him like silt. It's the same problem, returning in a new form. The world is functioning, but it is not sustainable. The gods need workers, not divine, but durable. Servants who can tend the earth, maintain the temples, and offer the sacrifices that keep the cosmic balance alive. The murmurs of discontent ripple again through the divine court. This time, even Enkiel listens. The council gathers once more in Nippur. The air crackles with tension. The torches burn low as the elder gods speak in turn. Enki proposes something unthinkable, to make a new being from the clay of the earth, infused with the breath of the divine, intelligent, obedient, and capable of labor. Silence follows. Even the wind pauses. To mix spirit and matter, it's a risk none have taken before. But Enki is certain, the earth is ready, and the Mickey, the laws that shape all culture and craft, are already in place. Now the world only needs hands to wield them. Nicole's aglow as her gaze. She understands what it will cost. Life created in the image of the gods will inherit not only their strength, but their hunger, their longing for knowledge, for order, for freedom. Still, the decision is made. In the dim glow of the divine council, Enki and Nikolzag rise together and walk toward the clay pits of Ki. Behind them, the other gods follow in silence, their shadows stretching across the newborn world. The laws of civilization have been written. Now the gods will write something new, something that breathes. The air is still. The gods stand together in the soft clay of the riverbank, their feet half buried in the mud of Ki, the living earth. It's neither night nor day, a kind of twilight that belongs only to creation. The reeds sway in the wind. The horizon glows faintly. The decision has been made. The world needs workers. The gods need rest. And so Enki and Nikolzig prepare to make something entirely new. A creature of both soil and spirit. Nikolzig mines first. Her hands sink into the damp clay. The texture is cool, pliable, full of promise. From this she says softly, "We will shape the body." Enki stands beside her, watching the ground ripple like water. And from this he murmurs, touching his chest, "We will shape the soul." The other gods gather close. The younger ones, the Ajiji, lean forward eagerly, their faces lit by torchlight. They are weary from their endless work, but their eyes glimmer with hope. Perhaps soon they will rest. Ninhursag shapes the first form. It's small at first, like a doll molded from mud, but the longer she works, the more lifelike it becomes. Limbs stretch, fingers separate. The faint impression of ribs emerges beneath a chest that's never breathed. The clay figure lies still, waiting. Enki gestures to one of the younger gods, a being named Wheeler, or in other texts, Jeshtuet. He is strong and wise, known for his understanding and his restlessness. From your essence, Enki says solemnly, the new ones will inherit reason. The god bows his head, understanding what is being asked. In some versions, it's a sacrifice. In others, a willing offering. Either way, his spirit, his Jeshtu, his understanding is mixed into the clay. From this union of divine blood and earth, life begins to stir. Ninhursag lifts her hands and breathes across the figure's face. The air trembles. For a moment there is silence, then a faint movement, a sigh, the first breath. The clay darkens, warms, begins to glow from within. The first human opens its eyes. There is no language yet, no word for what it is. Only the sound of air entering lungs for the first time. A small, astonished gasp that echoes through the world. The gods step back, watching in wonder. Even Enlil, who often hides his emotions behind command, feels something stir within him. Life has begun. Ninhursag shapes more figures, not identical, but varied. Some tall, some small, some broad, some slender, each molded with care, each infused with a spark of divine essence. When they stand, they blink at the world like newborn animals. Their feet sink slightly into the mud, marking the first human footprints on earth. Inti calls out to them in the divine tongue, but they do not yet understand. Language must be taught, memory must be learned. They are not gods, but they are not beasts, either. Something in them recognizes purpose, even if they cannot name it. The younger gods rejoice. Now we will rest, they say. The labor of the world belongs to them, and so the burden passes. The humans are set to work, tending the irrigation ditches, shaping bricks, feeding livestock, offering small bowls of grain and beer to the shrines. Their bodies are strong, their endurance unmatched. They neither age nor tire, quickly, for their clay still holds divine heat. The gods watch with satisfaction as the fields bloom and the canals run clear. At first, the arrangement is perfect. The humans labor, the gods oversee, the temples are filled with offerings, and the smoke of sacrifice rises like a signal to heaven. The Sumerians would later say that this was the world's first peace, a time when gods and mortals shared purpose without conflict. But perfection never lasts. Over time, the humans grow numerous. They begin to speak among themselves in words of their own making. They laugh, sing, argue. They build small huts near the canals and light fires at night. Their voices rise like a tide, filling the dark with noise. Enlil, Lord of Air, cannot sleep. The clamor of humankind reaches the heavens. At first he endures it. After all, this was the order he helped design. But the noise grows louder. Every night, the songs and shouts and laughter echo upward like the rush of wind through 1,000 reeds. He goes to the council and says, "They were made to serve, not to disturb." Inti, always the defender of life, replies, "They are alive, brother, and the living make sound." Ninhursag says nothing. She only watches the smoke from the temple rise, curling in thin, fragile lines. Inti's patience wears thin. He begins to send small warnings, heat waves, sickness, minor floods, as if the world itself were shushing its children. But humans adapt. They invent new ways to survive, storing grain, building walls, learning medicine. Each hardship teaches them something new. That, perhaps, is what the gods didn't anticipate. Humans do not simply endure, they innovate. The spark that Enki placed within them, that shard of divine cleverness, begins to shine too brightly. They build kilns, weave nets, track the stars. They make their own small versions of the me, shaping tools and laws and songs that mirror the heavens. The gods look down and see themselves reflected in the creatures they made. And reflection is a dangerous thing. One evening, as the sun sets red over the plain, Enki walks alone along the canal. The air smells of wet reeds and smoke. He watches a group of humans laughing together, passing a bowl of beer, sharing a loaf of bread. There is no fear in them, only joy. For the first time, he feels something like guilt. They were made to work, yet they found a way to live, to find pleasure in existence. That was never part of the plan. In the high court of heaven, Enki grows uneasy. They multiply too quickly, he says. Soon their numbers will outweigh their reverence. The other gods murmur agreement. The humans' devotion is slipping. Some forget to make offerings. Others question the unseen. The delicate balance between labor and worship begins to tilt, and then comes drought. The rivers thin, the fields crack, the animals die in the heat. The humans cry out to the gods, but the heavens remain silent. Only Enki listens, his heart heavy. Ninhursag warns him, if they perish, all balance will be lost. The earth cannot sing without their voices. But Enki has already made his decision. The humans were a tool, not a kin. If they fail their purpose, they can be replaced. That night, as the stars wheel over the dark plain, the first great argument among the gods begins. Not about order, but about mercy. Enki will defend humanity, no matter the cost. Enki will seek silence, no matter the consequence. And somewhere in the shadows between their realms, the humans themselves huddle around their fires, sensing that the gods who made them are no longer of one mind. The sky is darkening. The wind tastes of rain. Something vast is coming, not from heaven, but from the deep places of the earth, where Enki's waters still remember every secret. The balance that held the world steady is about to break. Night comes with a dry wind and the taste of dust. The canals shrink to strings of black glass. The fields make a brittle music when they move. In the high court of heaven, the debate that began as a murmur hardens into a verdict. Enki will have quiet, not a warning, not a drought, not a fever that passes with the moon, silence. The kind that washes a world clean. The gods bind themselves by oath. No hint to mortals, no message sent by dream or omen. The decision will fall without a herald. The sky seems clear. The air is calm. That is how endings always look the day before. In the deep beneath the earth, Enki listens to the stillness and understands what stillness means. He is bound by the oath, as the others are, but he has made a life's work of finding the narrow door between rule and mercy. He does not break his word. He speaks where no ear is, to a wall woven of reeds. Wall of reeds, he says softly. The wall does not answer. but sound moves through it, like water. On the other side lives a man known for careful hands, and a mind that notices small things, a boatman, a keeper of measures, a husband who counts his days by the moon's edge. His city is Shurapak. His name in some tablets is Atrahasis, exceedingly wise. The night has no breeze. The lamp in his room burns steady, and yet the reeds in the wall whisper. He sets the lamp closer and leans in. "Pull down your house," says the voice that is not a voice. "Build a boat, leave your wealth, save your life, gather the seed of living things." He does not ask who speaks. He understands what it costs to know too much. Instead, he asks for size. The answer arrives like a list from a scribe. Shape a hull, stout enough to bear a mountain of wet clay. Seal every seam. Use bitumen until your hands shine black. Bind the ribs with plaited reed. Set decks above, decks like a stacked city. Make a roof that can stand upon water as upon wind. Bring tools, grain, oil, and the skills you cannot afford to lose. At dawn he begins. He pays the carpenters well, copper for nails, bread for the crew, beer every evening. He tells the elders the gods have turned their faces, that the boat is an offering, that the labor honors the divine. None of it is untrue. Bitumen boils in clay kettles and runs like night into the seams. Ropes are twisted until they sing. The skeleton rises. The hull swells like a belly before rain. Days blur. The people of Shurapak come and go with baskets, jokes, guesses. Children press handprints into planks and are shooed away, leaving ghosts of play along the ribs. Animals arrive as if called cattle that hate the ramp and sheep that love it. Baskets of birds with bright eyes, clay jars that carry fish in sloshing dark. Seeds sealed in pitch, tools wrapped in woven cloth. The boat begins to smell like a world, oil and hay and fear and hope. When the last peg is set and the final jar stowed, Atrahasis walks through each deck with a scribe's patience. He touches bundles of reed, counts sacks of grain, tests knots, taps jars to hear the right tone. At the stern he places a small altar of brick. The sky goes strangely low. Clouds with the color of hammered lead rise at the rim of the plain. The wind turns, then stops, then turns again, as if searching for itself. In the temples, lamps stream sideways, then their flames flatten. Priests measure the moon and put away their rods without comment. A farmer on the canal bank points with the handle of his hoe, but the words won't leave his mouth. The first drop is huge, more stone than water. It breaks on the dust with a sound like a jar, shattering. Then another, then 100. Air unthreads into water. The river leaps its bed as if it has been waiting for permission. The horizon disappears. The plain becomes a bowl under a pump that will not stop. Atrahasis drives the last peg in the door. The pitch sets. Inside, the world narrows to wood and breath. The boat trembles. A low groan passes through the timbers, the sound a forest might make if it learned it could swim. Outside, houses lift and move like toys. Walls fold, a cow floats past with the calm of a god. For 6 days and 7 nights, so the old lines say, the storm unstitches the land. Lightning walks the water. The wind claws the roofs from buildings that no longer have ground beneath them. In heaven, even the bold ones cower. Inanna hides her face. Ninhursag weeps for a cradle of clay, with no walls to keep it warm. Enlil does not speak. Enki keeps his eyes on the dark and counts. Inside, the boat becomes a city. The deckhands pray to knots. Children sleep where baskets were meant to go. A bird escapes its crate and vanishes into the dark of the rafters, then returns because there is nowhere else. The smell is a mix of pitch and wet wool, and everything people are when the world is small. when the hull stops shuddering and the rain learns a gentler voice. The light that enters has never been seen before, a day with no horizon, water to the edge of sight. You cannot steer when there is no difference between river and field, so he waits. After many days, he releases a dove. It circles the boat and returns wet with the world. Later, a swallow, swift, brave, hopeful, goes out and comes back with the same news. Nowhere yet. He waits again until waiting feels like a profession. Then he opens his hands and a raven leaps. It shrinks to a stitch on the blank cloth of water and does not return. The boat finds the idea of land, not a shore, but a resistance beneath. A whisper that turns the water's music into a different key. The hull sighs, as if relieved to speak wood to earth again. He builds a small altar on the upper deck and lights the kind of fire that remembers childhood kitchens, reeds and brush, a sliver of resinous wood, a breath held just long enough. The smoke rises, like a line drawn with a good stylus. He places roasted grain, pours out beer, sets cooked meat where no mouth appears to be, and yet the air changes. Old texts say the gods gather, like flies around the scent. It is not gracelessness. It is memory. For the days of drowning, there were no offerings. Hunger is a teacher, even to the divine. The assembly in heaven breaks into voices. Ishtar laments what rage has erased. Ninhursag counts absences in a mother's arithmetic. Enlil sees smoke and knows a condition has been broken. He thunders for the oath. He demands the name of the one who has spoken where no ear was allowed. Enki does not deny. He argues the arithmetic of mercy. A city is not quieted by drowning the world, he says. If noise offends, shorten the days. If numbers frighten, let there be spaces in the years. Set gates on fertility. Weigh life with a lighter measure. The council wavers. The storm has spent them. The smoke has reminded them. Enlil's anger is a bright sword, blunted by an empty table. The new terms take shape like laws scratched on clay, limits that protect the living from abundance, as surely as from lack. Not promise, not kindness. Policy. For Atrahasis there is no debate, only air. He breathes it as if it were rare and deserves attention. He opens the hatch wider, and the light has a land color now. The edges of hills appear like the backs of animals asleep. In some tellings, the survivor is given a gift no one else will have again. A life that does not end, and a home at the edge of the world where rivers begin. In others, he returns to soil, plants a first field, learns again the calendar of clouds. All versions agree on the hinge. The world will not be remade by flood. It will be managed by measure. Above, the gods settle like dust after rain. Below, the water leaves in complicated silence. Fish hang in trees. A jar that once stood in a kitchen miles away arrives unbroken and is used again. The boat rests where no boat should and becomes wood the way all boats do. Atrahasis steps onto mud that holds his weight. His footprints last until the next breeze. He does not know it. How could he? But kings will soon coax cities from this same silt. Laws will find their shapes. The council above will exchange the terror of storms for the steady grammar of decrees. A new order will rise from flood-flat ground, and it will need a story to explain why authority belongs where it does. Far to the north, a city with a modest name is gathering ambition. It will borrow old gods and teach them new work. It will sing creation from a different throne. Its priests are already listening to the sky, and in the temples that survive, a single line on a single tablet dries in a safe heat. After the waters, kingship descended again. From where? That is the road ahead. out of the floodplain and into a city that will rename the center of the world. When the water finally recedes, the world looks unfamiliar. The horizon is clean, scoured of memory. The land that once carried temples and cities is now a plain of shining mud, streaked with driftwood and bones. What was lost is uncountable. What remains is possibility. Atrahasis or Ziusudra or Utnapishtim, depending on which city tells the tale, stands on a small rise of silt that will one day be called land again. The air is heavy with the scent of wet clay. Around him, the remnants of his world sleep beneath the flood's silver skin. He knows, though, that the gods have not abandoned it entirely. They have only changed their terms. The waters withdraw like servants dismissed, slowly, reluctantly. Fish rot on the riverbanks. The wind carries the whisper of distant waves, the last sigh of a storm that once swallowed the earth. From this silence, life begins again. The myths say that kingship, once lost to the flood, descended from heaven anew. No one explains how. Perhaps it drifted down with the morning mist, or was carried on the backs of birds that never returned to the boat. But the Sumerians were clear on one point: civilization was not a human invention. It was a divine grant, a renewed contract between heaven and earth. And so, from the new mud, the old gods choose fresh homes. The first to rise is Kish, the city of beginnings. It grows from the clay like a reed that refuses to stay buried. The people here rebuild the canals, laying them straight and narrow, guided by old memory and new caution. They cut new bricks from the riverbanks and bake them hard under the sun. The smell of kiln smoke mixes with the scent of wet grain. The gods bless them with harvest, and Kish becomes the seat of the first post-flood kings. The Sumerian king list records their names: Etana, who ascended to heaven and made firm all the lands. His story will be told for centuries, a mortal who sought the favor of An and rode a great eagle into the sky, searching for the herb of birth, the promise of dynasty. It's more than myth, it's an assertion that authority, even among mortals, still depends on divine permission. From Kish, kingship moves like a flame passed from torch to Uruk, radiant under Inanna's gaze, to Uru favored by the moon god Nana, to Akkad fierce and restless, and finally to Babylon, the city that will one day claim the heavens themselves. But for now the world is still young, the air smells of salt and new beginnings. In Uruk, Inanna's temples gleam with lapis lazuli and gold. The ziggurat rises like a staircase for the gods, its steps whitewashed and shining. Every evening, the priests climb it, carrying bowls of oil and incense. They light the lamps one by one, until the city below glows like a mirror of the stars. The people gather in the plazas, traders shouting, bakers selling flat loaves still hot from the ovens, children running between stalls. From the harbor comes the sound of wooden ships, their sails patched with reeds, carrying copper, timber, and the first written tablets of law. This is the dawn of what we would call history. And yet, for the Sumerians, it is still myth, because the divine is not gone. The gods walk the streets in statues, their presence carried in the eyes of priests and the breath of hymns. Each city sees itself as a living reflection of the heavens. Its layout, its rituals, its calendar, all mirror the order above. The world once drowned now functions like a clock rebuilt by divine engineers. Every festival marks a cosmic rhythm. Every offering reinforces the link between clay and cloud. The flood has taught them one thing above all else: life without balance will be erased. And so they measure everything, days by the path of the sun, months by the moon's phases, years by the flood's arrival. The temple scribes record it all, their styluses scratching like tiny rainstorms over clay. It's through these scribes that the world learns to remember itself again. They write of kings who dig canals, of priests who interpret dreams, of shepherds who rise to thrones. They copy and recopy the old stories of Enki, Enlil, and Nina Sag, of the Min, of the flood and the renewal. Each tablet becomes a pulse of civilization, each library a heart beating in the dark. In Uruk, the moon god's temple dominates the horizon. Its priestess weave silver cords and chart the cycles of light and shadow. They are mathematicians, astronomers, and poets all at once. When they calculate the moon's return, they are measuring the will of the divine. Further north, in Akkad, the descendants of kings look beyond the rivers. The plain seems too small. They dream of uniting all cities under one banner, one law, one god. That dream will one day belong to Sargon, the first great conqueror, but his shadow already stretches backward into these early days, a whisper of ambition that feels almost divine. And above them all, unseen but not absent, the Anunnaki watch. They no longer walk the earth as they once did. Their temples are their bodies now, their statues, their faces, but their counsel endures. They are the ones who approve the rising of kings and the fall of cities. Each transfer of power, each descent of kingship is their decision. The myths never say where the council meets after the flood. Some say in the sky, some say deep beneath the mountains, others in the chambers of the god's first city, Nippur. Wherever they are, their decrees shape the fates of empires. And yet, even among the Anunnaki, the hierarchy begins to shift. Old gods fade, new ones rise. The heavens are no longer as still as they once were. In the city of Eridu, Enki still reigns over the deep. His wisdom endures in the rituals of purification and the laws of irrigation. But further north, a different name begins to echo in the hymns of the priests. A younger, more assertive god, Marduk. He is born not of the first generation, but of ambition. He embodies the same cleverness that once drove Inanna to steal the me, the same daring that led Enki to save Atrahasis. He is the son of wisdom and power combined, the promise of a new order where one god will do what the council once required a host to accomplish. For now, Marduk is only a star among stars, bright, yes, but not yet ascendant. The old gods still hold the reins. Enlil's decrees still define kingship. Enki's waters still flow. Inanna's passions still stir hearts and wars. But in Babylon, a small temple rises by the river. Its walls are plain, its altars modest. Inside, a handful of priests chant hymns that sound different, not to all gods but to one. They speak of creation by a single will, of chaos tamed, not by counsel but by conquest. Their prayers drift upward like sparks, unnoticed by the great cities. But the heavens are listening. In the quiet between the stars, something stirs, a power waiting for its age to come, and soon the gods who once worked in harmony will find themselves in competition. The balance of heaven and earth, so carefully rebuilt after the flood, is about to tilt once more. The rivers will not drown the world this time, but ideas sharper than floods, brighter than fire, will. The flood has passed. The cities have risen, and for a while, a long while, the world remains balanced. But balance never stays still. It breathes, shifts, seeks new centers. In the south, where the two rivers curl like silver serpents through the plain, the old cities fade, and new ones rise. Eridu grows quiet. Eridu shines with the silver of the moon. But further north, where dust meets sky, a new city begins to speak the language of destiny. Babylon. It starts humbly, a cluster of clay walls and ziggurats along the Euphrates. A city with no great legacy, no ancient name. The elders say its bricks are still soft when its god is born. But in those humble walls the future of heaven is already shifting. The god's name is Marduk, the youngest of the great deities, the son of Ea, the Akkadian name for Enki, lord of the waters, and Damkina, goddess of the earth's womb. From his father Marduk inherits wisdom, from his mother he inherits dominion. But what defines him most is his ambition. In the hymns that come later they call him Asaluhi, the one who knows the secrets of the deep, Bel, the Lord, Shazu, the knower of hearts, and when his story is finally written, it will fill 7 tablets and define the empire that bears his name. That story is called the Enuma Elish, when on high. It begins not in Babylon, but in the dawn, before the flood, before even the division of heaven and earth. In that mythic time, only the primordial waters existed, the mingling of Apsu, the sweet fresh waters, and Tiamat, the salt sea. Together they birthed the first gods, Lamu, Anshar, Kishar, and from them the Deities we already know, Enuma, and Ea. But in this Babylonian retelling, the tone has changed. The cosmos is not a council, it is a battlefield. Apsu grows weary of his noisy children, their endless motion, their laughter that shakes the depths. He plans to destroy them, to reclaim the quiet. But Edda, clever, cunning, inheritor of Enki's wisdom, discovers the plot and slays Apsu first. Using magic and strategy, from Apsu's still body, Edda builds his palace, deep in the waters of creation. And there, from the mingling of divine blood and ocean foam, Marduk is born. He is not like the others. His eyes blaze with power, his limbs are radiant. 4 winds play around his head like living servants. His voice shakes the deep. Even the elder gods pause when they hear it. Tiamat, mother of oceans, grieves for Apsu. From her grief comes fury. She fills herself with monsters, serpents, scorpion men, horned dragons, storms given flesh. She appoints a new champion, Kingu, and gives him the Tablet of Destinies, the ultimate symbol of divine authority. Whoever holds it can command the universe. The heavens reel, the gods retreat. None dare face her wrath. Until Marduk stands up. He is young, but his power is unmatched. He offers to fight Tiamat, but only on one condition. If he wins, the gods must grant him supreme authority. The council agrees, desperate for salvation. They place their fate in his hands. Marduk arms himself with the winds, the bow, and the thunderbolt. His chariot gleams with 4 horses. Fear, terror, tempest, and battle. When he confronts Tiamat, the seas boil, the sky darkens. Lightning splits the void. He casts his net, made from the north wind, and traps her. Then, with a spear, he pierces her heart. Her cry becomes the first echo of thunder. When she falls, Marduk splits her body in 2. One half becomes the dome of heaven, the other the foundation of the earth. He hangs her eyes as stars to mark the day and night. From her ribs he shapes mountains. From her blood he mixes clay and makes mankind. It is a violent creation, born of conquest, not collaboration, but it defines a new age. The older order of divine councils, of Enlil, Enki, and Ninhursag, gives way to a single commanding voice. Where the Sumerians saw the cosmos as a balance between forces, the Babylonians now see a throne, and Marduk sits upon it. He takes the Tablet of Destinies from Kingu's corpse and fixes it to his chest. He divides the gods into ranks, 50 great ones, hundreds of lesser ones. He arranges the constellations, assigns duties, builds the calendar, and names the months. He becomes the architect of time itself. The younger gods bow, the older gods yield. The Anunnaki, once the administrators of heaven, now serve as judges beneath Marduk's rule. And so the myth of the world changes shape again. The flood was renewal. This is consolidation. A cosmic bureaucracy becomes a monarchy. On earth, the city mirrors the heavens. Babylon grows in Marduk's image, disciplined, radiant, unstoppable. Its streets are laid like spokes around a center where the Esagila, the temple of Marduk, rises. At its heart stands a golden statue of the god himself, holding the staff and the ring of authority. The priests recite the Enuma Elish, every New Year's festival. For 12 days, the story of creation is performed in full, from chaos to order, from many gods to one king of heaven. The city listens, rapt, because this is not just myth, it's a mirror of empire. Just as Marduk tamed Tiamat, the kings of Babylon will tame the nations. Just as Marduk set the stars in order, Babylon will set the world in measure. Each year, when the recitation ends, the people cheer, the temples fill with offerings, and the king himself kneels before Marduk's statue. The high priest removes the king's crown, strikes his cheek, and demands he confess his unworthiness. If tears fall, Marduk is appeased. If not, his favor is in doubt. It is both humiliation and renewal, a ritual echo of the cosmic order itself. The king submits, so that order may continue. For centuries, Babylon thrives under this creed. Its walls stretch for miles. Its hanging gardens rise tier upon tier. Its scholars chart the heavens with a precision that still humbles modern eyes. The Enuma Elish becomes more than scripture. It becomes identity, the mythic engine of empire. But beneath the hymns and incense, something stirs. Not all the gods accept their demotion. In the old sanctuaries of Nippur and Eridu, the priests of Enlil and Enki whisper the older names. They remember a time when creation was shared, not conquered. When the heavens were a council, not a court. In the quiet halls of Uruk, the temple of Inanna still glows at night. Her priestess sing hymns not to kingship or order, but to love, desire, and rebellion. Their voices drift through the night, like forgotten stars, faint but not gone. The world of Marduk is one of control, but control is fragile. The gods of freedom, of curiosity, of defiance, of balance, still breathe in the shadows of empire, and soon a new tension will rise, not between gods, but between those who worship them, between kings who claim divine right, and the people who remember that once, long ago, heaven was shared. The story of Babylon is not yet at its peak, but the winds are changing again. The rituals of empire are about to begin, and with them, a new kind of faith. The sun rises over Babylon, and the air already glows with dust and gold. From the walls you can see the city unfold like a tapestry. Wide boulevards, lined with glazed blue bricks, gardens rising in terraces of green and scent, the Euphrates curving through it all like a slow bronze serpent. Every morning, the river carries light. Every evening, it carries prayer. But this is not just a city. This is a machine of ritual, an instrument built to keep the world aligned with heaven. It begins with sound. At dawn, trumpets of bronze echo across the rooftops. The people wake not to labor, but to ceremony. It is Akkad, the New Year festival, 12 days when Babylon ceases to be a city and becomes a living myth. In the narrow streets, the scent of cedar smoke thickens. Priests sweep the temples clean with palm branches, dipped in pure water. Women carry bowls of flour and honey. Men string garlands of date palm leaves across the gates. The air vibrates with the chant of thousands, the slow rising hum of an empire, reminding itself that it exists because heaven allows it. The priests of Marduk emerge first. They wear robes dyed the color of the river at dusk. In their hands they carry small golden figurines, not idols but vessels. Each one holds a portion of divine power, a spark of the Milo that governs creation. They walk from temple to temple, blessing the gods of Babylon's pantheon, Nabu, Ishtar, Shamash, Adad, calling them by their Akkadian names now, though the old Sumerian spirits still breathe beneath. Each receives its due offering, milk, incense, and words of praise older than any language spoken in the streets below.
As the procession moves, the people line the streets, bowing as the statues pass. The air fills with drumming, hundreds of hands on stretched hides, a heartbeat that never stops. But the true drama happens inside the Esagila, the temple of Marduk. Here the king himself must enter, not as ruler, but as supplicant. He walks through the outer courtyard, past walls carved with lions and bulls, up the long staircase toward the inner sanctum. Each step is a reminder of his mortality. Behind him, a single priest carries the Enuma Elish written on clay, the story of creation, the empire's founding myth. Inside, the temple is dark, lit only by oil lamps reflected on polished gold. Marduk's statue stands at the center, a towering figure of calm command, eyes inlaid with precious stone, lips sealed in eternal silence. The high priest approaches the king, holding a golden scepter and a small dagger. His voice carries through the chamber, solemn and rehearsed. Have you upheld justice? Have you ruled with wisdom? Have you protected the weak? The king kneels. I have. The priest studies him for a long moment, then raises his hand and strikes him, hard across the cheek. The sound echoes. The king does not flinch. If tears fall, the god is pleased. If not, the omen is ill. The blow is not punishment. It's purification. It reminds everyone, even the highest, that power belongs first to the divine. The ritual is precise, almost surgical in its humility. Afterward, the priest returns the crown, and the king rises renewed, a vessel emptied and refilled. Outside, the city roars with joy. The old year has died. The new one lives. At night, the festival changes shape. Torches line the riverbanks, their flames reflected in the dark current. Boats glide along the water, carrying statues of the gods to the Birt, Akitu, the house of celebration beyond the city walls. There, under a sky heavy with stars, the story of creation is recited once more, not read, but performed. The priests chant the verses of the Enuma Elish, their voices deep and rhythmic. When on high the heaven had not been named, when the earth beneath had not been called by name, when none but Apsu, their begetter, and Tiamat, she who bore them, mingled their waters together. Each line echoes through the open air. The crowd repeats the refrains like a heartbeat. Every sound, every pause rebuilds the universe in miniature. As they reach the climax, Marduk's battle with Tiamat, the drums erupt in thunder, dancers in scaled armor twist and fall, their shadows flickering like waves. Marduk's champion, crowned in gold, raises his spear. The air hums with anticipation. When he thrusts it downward, the crowd cries out as one. It is the sound of victory, of order reborn from chaos. The festival is not entertainment, it's maintenance. Each year, the performance renews creation itself. Without it, the gods might forget the rhythm of the world. Without the ritual, the stars might fall out of their appointed paths. And so the people celebrate with fervor that borders on devotion. Beer flows, music swells, lovers dance in the shadow of the temples, knowing that this night, the first of the new year, belongs to both gods and men alike. Even the slaves are freed, for the duration of the festival, for 12 days, all are equal. It is the echo of the moment after the flood. when the world was clean, and no one yet wore crowns. But beneath the beauty, a question stirs, the same one whispered in the shadow of Enlil's temple, long ago. How long can order endure? Because power, like the river, erodes its banks, no matter how high the walls. The old priests of Eridu still murmur that the flood was not punishment but correction. The high scribes of Nippur write that no kingdom lasts forever, and in the north, among the mountains, strange new gods are spoken of, ones who are not born of And and Kir, but of fire and storm, carried by tribes that do not yet bow to Babylon. Their names are not written yet, but their stories are beginning. For now, Babylon glows, a city that believes itself eternal. The torches burn through the night. The smell of incense hangs in the air. The river flows quietly past the sleeping walls. But in the deepest chamber of the Esagila, behind the statue of Marduk, there is another room, smaller, darker, older. Inside, a priest kneels alone before an altar of black stone. Upon it lies a tablet, cracked and worn, inscribed with a single ancient symbol, one that predates Babylon, predates the flood, predates even the gods who rule the heavens now. He runs his fingers across the mark, whispering words no longer spoken aloud. They are not prayers, they are names. Names of those who never joined the council of heaven, who were not granted thrones or temples, who dwell in the dark below waiting. The festival drums echo one last time. The crowd cheers, unaware. Above them, the stars burn cold and distant. And deep beneath the earth, the Anunnaki of the underworld begin to stir. The torches of Babylon fade. One by one, the festival is over. The songs have quieted. The smoke of incense drifts upward into a sky as black as obsidian. But not all the gods have gone to rest. Beneath the shining cities and their ziggurats, beneath the temples and palaces and the whispering reeds of the rivers, lies another world, vast, silent, and older than the heavens. The Sumerians called it Kur, the great below. The Akkadians would later call it Akkad, the land of no return. If heaven is order and light, Kur is memory, the slow settling of all things into dust. There is no flame here, only dim glow. The air smells of iron and stone. The walls are not built but grown, layered with salt and crystal. Streams trickle without sound. The ceiling is low enough that even the gods must bow. At the gate stands Neti, the doorkeeper, ancient and tireless. His face is neither kind nor cruel. It is duty carved into shape. Behind him lies the sevenfold path. 7 gates, 7 thresholds, each guarded by a decree that none may pass whole. And in the deepest hall, on a throne carved from shadow itself, sits Ereshkigal, queen of the great earth. She is sister to Inanna, daughter of Nana and Ningal, granddaughter of Enlil, a goddess of the same divine blood that fills the heavens. Yet her realm is exile. She rules not by choice, but by necessity. Someone must tend to the quiet. Someone must keep the balance between life and what follows. Around her sit the Anunnaki of the underworld, the 7 judges of the dead. They no longer walk among men or oversee the stars. These are the forgotten ones, the remnants of the first divine order. Their names are whispered only in funerary prayers. Namtar, who writes fates, Hubishag, who weighs guilt, Neti, who opens the gates, Nergal, who commands plague and war. Each carries a seal, each marks the soul with judgment. When mortals die, they are brought here, not for punishment, not for paradise, but for permanence. The Sumerians did not imagine death as reward or torment. It was continuation, muted and grey. The dead eat dust, drink from shallow puddles, and whisper to one another in voices as thin as breath. Those who were honored in life wear fine robes, and eat from silver bowls, though the bowls still hold only dust. Those forgotten above wander naked, searching for offerings that will never come. It is not cruelty, it is reflection. The afterlife mirrors memory. You are what the living remember of you, nothing more, nothing less. And yet, even the great below cannot remain still forever. One day, the upper world trembles with rumor. Inanna, goddess of love and war, has decided to descend. Why? The tablets argue endlessly. Ambition, compassion, curiosity. Some say she seeks to extend her rule, to take her sister's throne and unite heaven and the underworld. Others claim she wishes to understand death itself, the only realm left unconquered. Whatever the reason, she prepares with solemn care. She adorns herself in 7 symbols of power. The shugura, her crown of the heavens. The lapis necklace, symbol of allure. The breastplate of kingship, her authority. The golden ring, her judgment. The rod and line, her measure. The ankle bracelets, her readiness for battle. And her garments of ladyship woven with light. Each glows like a star as she approaches the first gate. Neti bars her path. Who comes to the land of no return? Inanna, she says, her voice calm. I come to see my sister. Neti warns her, you may enter, but the law is fixed. At each gate, you must remove 1 symbol of power. None may face Ereshkigal, crowned. Inanna agrees. At the first gate, she surrenders her crown. At the second, her necklace. At the third, her breastplate. At the fourth, her golden ring. At the fifth, her measuring rod. At the sixth, her ankle bracelets. At the seventh, her royal garment. By the time she reaches the throne of her sister, she is naked, not in shame, but in truth. Ereshkigal looks up from her dark seat. The 2 sisters face each other, mirrors divided by the distance between light and shadow. You came in pride, says Ereshkigal, and pride does not live here. What happens next is written in fragments, broken lines on cracked clay. Some say Ereshkigal strikes her dead with a single gaze. Others say she calls the 7 judges, who turn their eyes upon Inanna, and their stare becomes stone. Either way, Inanna falls. Her body hangs upon a hook in the wall, lifeless, suspended between godhood and oblivion. Above in the bright world, the temples fall silent. The fields wither, the lovers' songs cease. The night loses its warmth. For 3 days and 3 nights, the world holds its breath. Enki, hearing of this from his deep palace, acts swiftly. He shapes 2 small beings, neither male nor female, made of dirt and the water of life. He sends them below with offerings of sympathy for Ereshkigal's suffering. When they reach the queen, she is in pain, moaning like a woman in labor. The creatures echo her cries, mirroring her agony perfectly. She looks at them, surprised. Who are you that you mourn with me? We are those who understand, they reply. Moved, she offers them a gift, water and food for the dead. They refuse, asking instead for the body hanging on the hook. Ereshkigal hesitates, then nods. Take her. They sprinkle the water of life upon Inanna's corpse. Slowly color returns, breath returns. The goddess opens her eyes. She is reborn, but there is a price. When she rises to the upper world, the laws of balance demand that someone take her place below. The gatekeepers seize her attendants, but Inanna resists. Not them, she cries. They are innocent. Then she sees Dumuzi, her husband, seated on his throne in splendor, wearing her absence like a crown. Fury and sorrow twist together. She points at him. Take him. The demons of the underworld drag Dumuzi away. His sister Inanna weeps and offers herself in his place for half the year. Thus the cycle begins. Dumuzi descending for 6 months, returning for 6, the birth of seasons, the rhythm of life and death entwined. Dinana has learned what all must learn. The underworld is not evil, only necessary. Every seed must sink before it rises. Every god must bow before balance. Yet something changes after her descent. The priests whisper that she came back different, quieter, more distant. The hymns to her name grow softer, more mournful. The temples begin to mix their prayers to Inanna with offerings to Ushkigal. Even the Anunnaki of the underworld seem to listen differently now. They do not rage or demand. They record, they watch, they wait. Because death, once understood, becomes something else. A mirror and mirrors, once lit, can show anything, even the faces of gods. Above in Babylon, the torches of Marduk's temple still burn, but their smoke curls downward as well as up. The two worlds are beginning to reflect each other, heaven bright and structured, the underworld dim and patient, each holding the other in quiet tension. It's said that sometimes, in the dead of night, when the lamps of the Esagila flicker, the priests hear footsteps below the floor, slow, measured, heavy as time. Perhaps it is only echo, or perhaps the Anunnaki are walking again, because the world above forgets easily. But the world below never forgets at all. The night is quiet again. The torches of the temple have burned down to thin threads of smoke. Somewhere above the sleeping city, a single candle still flickers, its light trembling against the stone. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the sigh of the ancient world settling into memory. The gods have grown silent, their statues gathering dust, but silence is not absence. It's endurance. Thousands of years have passed since Inanna rose from the underworld, since Marduk's priests chanted the story of creation by the river's edge. The great ziggurats, those staircases of heaven, now lie beneath layers of sand. The rivers have changed their courses, carving new paths through the plain where Sumer once breathed. Yet the rhythm remains, the flood and the seed, the rising and the fall. Archaeologists dig into that rhythm now, uncovering it layer by layer. Beneath the baked soil, they find bricks still stamped with royal names. Etana, Gilgamesh, Hammurabi. They find clay tablets, no larger than a hand, inscribed with wedge marks that still whisper of law, of labor, of dreams. Each tablet is a heartbeat from a world that believed everything had meaning. The Anunnaki are still there, pressed into those tablets like seeds. Their names, though changed by tongues and centuries, survive in faint echoes. Enki, Enlil, Inanna, Ninurse. Their symbols move across cultures from Sumer to Akkad, from Babylon to Assyria, from Mesopotamia to the pages of Genesis and beyond. The goddess becomes Ishtar, then Astarte, then Aphrodite. Enki's wisdom becomes the serpent's gift of knowledge, and Marduk's order becomes the divine right of kings. The gods never truly vanished, they simply learned to wear new names. Imagine for a moment the last priest of Nippur. He walks through empty courtyards, his sandals stirring the dust of centuries. The temple that once rang with chants now echoes only with wind. The altars are cold. He carries a small oil lamp cupped in both hands, guarding it from the night air. He doesn't know that empires have already shifted beyond his horizon, that Persia rises, that Greece is learning to write, that Rome waits unborn in the distance. All he knows is that the prayers must be said, even if no one is listening. He kneels before the statue of Enlil, now chipped and cracked, and whispers the old invocations. May the wind of your breath still move the clouds. May the river remember its path. He pauses, listening for an answer. There is none, but he keeps speaking. Because faith, at its heart, was never about response. It was about rhythm, the persistence of saying the words because they once mattered and might again. He leaves the lamp burning, sets down his stylus beside a final tablet, and walks into the dawn. The tablet remains behind, drying in the warmth. When it's found millennia later, the text is simple. The gods are gone, but the order remains. Time folds, centuries pass like pages turned too quickly to notice. The desert swallows the old cities, the empires built on their bones rise and fall. The myths change shape, but they never truly die. Every time we build something greater than ourselves, a city, a law, a dream, we are retelling those stories in our own tongue. Every time we search the stars for patterns or meaning, we echo the scribes who once watched Venus trace its path above Uruk. And every time we wonder if there's more to life than the brief flicker of our days, we are in some quiet way listening for the Anunnaki again. Modern minds tend to think of them as superstition, ancient attempts to explain thunder or time. But in truth, the Sumerians were not naive. They knew the gods were metaphors, long before we had that word. The Anunnaki were not celestial dictators. They were mirrors, each reflecting something human. Enlil, the impulse to command. Enki, the curiosity to understand. Inanna, the hunger to love and to fight. Ninursa, the patience to nurture. Uruk, the acceptance of loss. Together, they form the anatomy of civilization. Every impulse that drives creation and decay. We like to think we've outgrown them, but look closer, they still move beneath our skin. Our machines are our temples. Now, our algorithms are our scribes. Our leaders still claim divine mandate, though the divine has changed its form. The names are gone, but the patterns remain. If you could stand tonight, where Uruk once stood, the plain would look endless. A dark sea of dust, under a river of stars. The wind would move through the ruins like breath through an empty chest. And if you waited long enough, you might hear it. The faint echo of reed flutes, the murmur of 1,000 prayers carried on the air, the rustle of old gods remembering the sound of their own names. You might even see them, not as figures of flesh or flame, but as ideas hovering just beyond the edge of memory. They would not speak. They would not need to. The world itself would whisper their message in the rustle of the wind through ancient stone. Nothing truly ends. In the candlelight, the story circles back to where it began. A world of clay, of water, of dreams pressed into tablets and left to dry in the sun. Creation, flood, empire, descent, silence, all part of the same cycle, repeating endlessly, each generation reshaping the myth to fit its own reflection. The candle burns lower, the wick bends. You can feel the air thicken with that same ancient stillness, the quiet after the flood, the hush before the first word was spoken. Outside your window, the modern world hums. Cars, lights, machines. But under all that sound, another rhythm beats, slower, older, steady as the turning of the earth. It's the rhythm of the first city, of the first priest, of the first god to look down and name the stars. It's the heartbeat of the Anunnaki, not as rulers, not as myths, but as memory. And maybe that's all they ever were, not beings above us, but reminders within us that creation and destruction, order and chaos, life and death, are all part of the same endless conversation. The candle sputters once, twice, and steadies. You can almost see the reflection of a ziggurat in its flame, rising toward heaven, crumbling, rising again. The story doesn't end here. It never did. Because every time someone lights a candle in the dark and begins to tell an old story, the gods of clay and water awaken once more. From the birth of heaven and earth to the rise of Babylon, from the first scribes pressing wet clay to the last echoes of forgotten gods, we have followed the story of the Anunnaki, the divine architects of civilization. Through flood and flame, through ritual and remembrance, their myth has shaped everything that came after, our laws, our legends, our longing to understand where we come from.
Tonight, as the last candle burns low, we leave them where we found them, half memory, half eternity, their whispers still woven through the quiet rhythm of history. If you enjoyed this quiet walk through ancient time, if the candlelight helped you drift, think, or dream, we'd love to know. Leave a comment below and tell us, what world should we visit next? Maybe the lost libraries of Alexandria, the silent tombs of the pharaohs, or the myths that shaped the stars above us. Every story we tell here is built by your curiosity. When you share an idea, it becomes part of this shared ritual, the same way the first storytellers once gathered around fires to remember who they were. If you'd like to hear more history told slowly, stories that breathe, unwind, and help you rest, please like, subscribe, and ring the little candle-shaped bell so you'll know when the next episode arrives. Until then, keep your candle burning low, and remember, history never sleeps. It only waits to be retold.